Hi and welcome back. Time for another acrylic painting. Lesson learned from the mermaid I did before this. Don't use the Galleria paint if you want to paint flat, and that was what I wanted to do. Picking up my brushes. I'm using Liquitex Basics this time because it's more fluent than the Galleria paint. And I went for primary colors, except I took yellow ochre instead of primary yellow because I wanted this kind of a muted tone painting. And yeah, the drawing is of my cats, or me and my husband's cats, Neptune and Sigurline. And they had both gone to bed along with my husband before I even started drawing. So this is not an accurate representation of him. It is kind of my artistic take on them, I guess. I knew there were some inaccuracies here and there, but like he is a lot bigger than her. He weighs more than twice as much as she does. He's a big tomcat Maine Coon, and she's a house cat, and she is actually now a normal size house cat, but she was tiny, tiny, tiny when she came, and I still think of her as being tiny, and she looks tiny next to him, but if would put her with a normal house cat, she would not stick out. She is a 4.5 kilo house cat, but I think actually for female house cat, she's maybe on a little bit on the big side. And they're the best of friends, and they get up to all kinds of fun together. And they're really good at sharing, and they're good at looking after each other. They are indoor cats with access to a closed-off yard in the back, so they don't get into trouble in the neighborhood, namely with cars. And sometimes somebody has gone out in the yard and doesn't come back in when somebody calls, so they can close the door. And then Neptune will come and pick us up and say, "Hey, you got the little one back in. She's outside, and you haven't heard her little tiny voice outside, but I did. So please come over here and open the door." And the same thing happens if he get locked up in a room in the house. She will come and ask us kindly to let him out. And that is really nice, actually, that they help each other that way. And yeah, so the style, I watched some things about cubism lately, and I took inspiration in that. This is not strictly a cubistic painting because cubism, you have to kind of put several angles into the same painting. So you would see something from the side and other parts of it would be from the front or the back or something. And I obviously didn't do that, but it's also not a realistic painting. So I just took this angular approach. On what I did was actually started with just a sketch, as I would normally do a sketch. And when I was happy with that and the composition and stuff, I went back in and I turned it all into straight lines and triangles and polygons of different things. And I made a mistake there with the paint. I painted some dark green, and when I was happy with where that was placed, I mixed the whole leftover of that green with some other colors. And I wasn't actually happy with how the dark green on the edge there looked. Liquitex is a bit too too transparent for what I'm trying to do here. I want a opaque, flat look on everything. And the paint didn't really deliver on that. Well, it did eventually, and that was because I went through everything 5 or 6 times, most times. And so I should have left some of that green paint to touch it. But here where I picked it up, you can really see it, especially at the top and down the right side. that background went through several changes. Other than touch-ups, I also changed some things because that I changed my mind about that big green blob up in the middle right part there. I have edited this video a lot because there was so much time where I just did touch-ups. And I have also cut out a lot of the mixing time where I've mixed paints. Here in the beginning, I haven't edited it so hard, but I've cut out more than half of the footage that I did film. And most of it is touch-ups and color mixing and brush rinsing. I didn't think that was necessarily super interesting. And yeah, but it was a really interesting painting to do, and I have very, very few regrets about this. That's actually kind of unusual. I usually always have quite a few things that I would change up in my next iteration of if I had to do things over. But here it is really only a little bit of some color choices. Now this part I'm painting now, I would have I was trying to mix a concrete gray, but before I got there, I ended up with this dull turquoise gray. And I'm going, oh, that's actually quite a nice color. I'll just go with that. And I do not regret that. But later I mix up another gray for the cats. And that was maybe a little too close to this turquoise, to be honest. And but it ended up working out quite okay anyways. So it's only a partial regret. It was just maybe a matter of I should have made one darker and one lighter or one or the other. But I found this very liberating and a lot more of a success than the mermaid I painted the day before. I was considering not uploading the mermaid, but I did anyways because if I'm just painting for myself, I have very few regrets about paintings. I have somewhere I look at it and go, oh my gosh, that was bad. But I don't regret doing it because I always learn something from each painting I do, or each drawing for that matter. And but I uploaded her because she is a break for me with the perfectionism and the realism. So she represents something, regardless of the painting not being great. And from the beginning of my channel, I had decided to show the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the total failures. Now, if you watch the video, I do not call her a failure, and to some degree, I think she is, and then she's not, because she's just different. I'm trying to leave my art to be just what it is, and there's always things or parts that are good and some that are less good, and there's always lessons to be learned. The mermaid lesson was pretty much that I should maybe try and embrace the abilities of my paints and my materials more than try to make them do things they are not supposed to do. And I reinforced that today with this painting because these are transparent paints and they weren't really super good, a super good choice for this type of painting. I should maybe have done this in gouache, to be honest. But transparency is not a problem, and they're not that transparent. And I had a good painting session with this. It was just as in a video, all those touch-ups aren't making good footage. But with the magic of editing, I picked out most of the touch-ups. This is also technically a touch-up. I left it in here because it was part of that don't lose your paint until you're happy lesson that I learned here. And yeah, and as you can see, the background kind of changes a little bit, and I didn't use all of the lines I had on my sketch. And I changed things as I was going. Now I'm done with all those touch-ups of the background. I am taking the light green and I color the cat's eyes that color. That's approximately that color in reality, but I also do not change it because of color consistency in the painting. And I am going over part of my tomcat there with white because there's so many sketch lines and they were a little hard to paint over, so I hope that I could maybe skip a couple of 3 coats of paint by covering them up before I started putting in the colors. And part of his body and face is actually white, so. And I didn't want to leave just the white of the canvas because canvas has a totally different texture that does not necessarily show through the paint, especially when you put in a lot of coats. So unlike with watercolors, I don't. If this had been a watercolor, I would just have left the white of the paper there. But as I said, this is acrylic, and I don't want the texture of the canvas to be my white. So I painted the white, even though it's on a white canvas. And yeah, a few more touch-ups before I then clean off my palette. I spend a lot of time letting things dry, look at it, and do some touch-ups before I finally decided, okay, it's done now. And I needed room on my palette. You can see over there the cats is not supposed to be green, so I needed room to mix colors for the cats other than the white and the green for the eyes. So yeah, cleaned up the palette, and now it's time to paint the cats. And they're both tabbies, and tabbies has some parts that is kind of an ochreish tan type of color, especially in the face and around the belly. So here we go, start to put in some things. Yeah, and I decided to change some things there, sketch up some more. And this is the beauty of not working with realism. You can just kind of change things as you like as you go. It's a much more free way of painting because you're not bound by all the it has to look real feelings. So I need a black for his shoulders and the stripes on his tail and stuff. And I just mixed all 3 colors together for that. It's not a deep black and it didn't cover super well, so it was again lots of touch-ups. But it worked. And so it got there in the end. It looked really scrappy at the beginning here, but I had no confidence that with a few paint overs, touch-ups, it would get there at the end. And so we fill him in. And I really enjoyed this part of the painting a lot because things are starting to come together and you slowly get more and more of an idea how the finished painting is gonna look. And I just liked it more and more. It's been a long time since I've been actually this happy with a painting. I think the last one that I was really happy with was actually the vulture I did for one of Dana Tollefson's challenges, Bluebird challenge, where I did the vulture in indigo and umber, I think. So give him a little bit of black there on the edge of his face and the tip of his ears. I spray my paint with water, but I actually was quite happy with how the Liquitex paint didn't dry too fast on the palette. It dried fast enough on the canvas, so it wasn't annoying, but it wasn't drying too fast on the palette, which was really nice. I didn't have problems with the paint drying on the palette before I was done with it. So now at this point I realize, oh my god, his face is just way, way, way too busy now. His eyes kind of disappear in all the other colors. So I do a few touch-up while I think about things. And yeah, lesson learned, don't use up all your paint, but we mix a gray here for the next part of him. And yeah, this is the gray that is a bit too close to the turquoise blue in the background. Now it looks okay here while the paint is fresh, but it darkens up a little bit as it dries, and then it becomes really close to each other. And the only place where it is really a problem is up above him, where I have decided to put the turquoise up behind his ears and his ears directly up against it. But we got remedies for that because we're by far not finished yet. And it all works out at the end, I promise. So yeah. So this just filling in the gray parts, and we can soon start painting on the little kitty. Yeah, I wanted the tip of his tail to be a little broader there, so that's the beauty of this. You can just change things, and here, yeah, let's just paint over some of the black and make it gray instead. Now he looks way better. And we're trying to fix that tail over there again. I have left some of the touch-ups so you can see the process of it. I just didn't think it was necessary to have it in there 15 times or more. But this was pretty much the process. Do a little bit of a fill in and then touch-ups and corrections and touch-up and corrections until I liked it. I'm definitely liking gouache more and more. Not gouache, I love gouache, but I also like acrylics more and more as I work with it. Now I'm mixing kind of a orangey color, a ginger, because little Shigalina there, she is part ginger and part just regular tabby. She has no white on her. If she had white on her, she would be called a calico, but I have no idea what you call them when they don't have any white, but they got the gray and the ginger mixed in together. A friend of mine who has been breeding Bengals think that she is either full or partially ginger, Bengal, because they apparently have that type of pattern on the fur. And I'd say with some of her behaviors, I could suspect that she's at least part Bengal. She's a very, very fast and very, very efficient hunter. she takes no prisoners unless she wants to. She catch flies and she catch birds, and she does it with an ease that is just incredible. And yeah, that gray and the green of the eye is too close. It was that in real life too, but we're not done, so no worries. She is not quite this much tree colored, but that's just my artistic license on this, that I make her look like that. So yeah, I really, it was more a feel than an accurate representation of my kitties. I gave the painting to my husband and he definitely recognized them. I just put it on his desk with a, here you go, my love. I went to bed and he came in and said, oh, that's a lovely painting you did of the kitties. So it did work. And yeah, it was super fun. The editing was less fun because I have cut out, oh my god, probably at least 2/3 of the whole footage. But it's okay. That's why it's maybe a little jumpy at parts. But I used a long time mixing colors and stuff. Normally when I work with acrylics, I do not care if the paint is not fully mixed on the palette before I start using it. I usually like that there's some variation in the color. And it's something you can't really do with watercolors. Either they mix fully or not at all. But here with acrylics and all, you can do this partial mixture. So, but here, because of this very fixed and angular look, I wanted all the colors to be very even and flat. Okay, I decided the background is done and the cats are done, so now we grab Posca pens and line all the transitions up. And some of the lines I painted over, I reinstate here and I add some extras. And I use two different Posca pens. Here I'm starting out with doing most of it with a, actually that's a medium type size. I don't remember the exact size of the pen, but it's kind of a medium bullet tip. And it worked fine. And as I was going, it gets more and more of a stained glass window look. And I wasn't super careful with those lines. If I didn't exactly hit the color transition, I just went over it again and made a broader line. But yeah, and I totally know that was a tangent and that's a no-no, but I left it in there, and I might intentionally also had done it in the beginning. There's a couple more, I believe. So, but I think it's really coming together with this lining work. I gave up most of my Posca pens a while back because they were just lying around and I never used them. I only used the black and the white and not very much. But all the colored ones I gave away along with my Molotov markers. And that's because I've been using them on paper, and except for the really thin ones, they tend to pull up the paper and make it pill. But now I really wish I hadn't done that because it really works nice on the canvas and canvas panels. So the trick here is to remember to get all the lines and line them up. And there was a lot of them. And so I spent sometimes some of the things also cut out was where I was just stopping and sitting staring at the canvas thinking what to do next. It looks very confident when you take out all of your doubts. So for the last parts here, I took the fine Posca pens for instance, their faces. And what I did was I went in and the black in and around his eyes, I colored in with a black Posca. So it's not that mixed black, it's a black. And it made actually his eyes stand out quite a lot. And I like that effect. And it also really helped on her eye. And yeah, this was a different but very, very nice painting session. Even with the ups and downs of the transparency of the paints, it was super, super nice to do. And it really encouraged me to do even more painting. I was back having fun with art. And that was in many ways super, super important. So yeah, the last final touches, and that's my kitty cat painting. Thank you all for coming and watching, and I hope you'll be back and see more of the stuff I do. And thank you. Take care. Bye bye.